Recording in progress.
How are we doing?
Okay.
Hey, your screen just came up.
Oh, yeah.
Am I good?
Now we got the Zoom thing in the middle of it. We need to reduce that.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
In the upper right corner.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, let me use
You
it.
gotta slide it over to get the
Slide it over to the left, or our left.
There you go.
Okay, where do I go?
Minimize. Second. Upper right corner.
Way up in the upper
Second
right
from
corner.
the
Right here?
far right. That one.
I think I lost you. Get everything but. How about this?
Well, that didn't work.
Maximize that. Yeah, maximize that one.
Do you see that?
There we go.
Okay. Are you ready?
All right.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
No, Scott.
All right, power to the people, right? Now, I may have shown some of these slides to you before. I'm not really sure, but I added some. It's going to be kind of a amalgam of migration slides and the use of star thistle, because that's related to the actual migration here from North America. But first, I want you to know that there are really 3 species of monarchs here. There's Danius plexippus, Danius aeripus, and Danius cleophile. So Danius plexippus is our monarch, our North American monarch. It goes all the way down to, people say, down to Costa Rica. And another version takes over from there going south. Danius aeripus is the South American monarch. You'll find it in Brazil, in Colombia, in Argentina. And then finally, the rarest of all is Danius cleophile. That is found in the island of, well, where Haiti is in Dominican Republic. And it's a very small group, a very clade of monarchs. But when you see these monarchs, they all look basically alike. They're very similar. The undersides can be a little bit different. Doing genetic studies, we think that they separated perhaps 2 million years ago. And judging on my account from where Danius plexippus is and Danius aeripus and cleophile, it looks like the whole thing began about 19 degrees north latitude. And if you draw a line from Mexico City, where all our monarchs go, basically, across to Haiti and Dominican Republic, you'll see that that's basically on the same parallel. So I think that's a very interesting thing at first. Now, they have a time compensated sun compass for directionality, which means that they can tell where the sun is and where they have to go, apparently, although some refute this. They do not have an internal map, which means that, as I've done in the past, you can take monarchs from, say, California, bring them to Michigan, and they'll fly exactly in the same direction. The sun compass that they do have resides in the central complex of the brain. It's like 4 cells of neurological material. It's very small. And in those 4 cells, they integrate the skylight information, which means the horizontal position of the sun, plane polarized UV light, etc. All these are integrated in that central complex. And then finally, to do all this, they need a circadian clock, a day-night clock like we have. That resides in the antennae, though, not in the brain. And that provides the clock that the sun compass uses for orientation. By the way, if you have any questions, let me know right away, okay? All right. Now, there's one more thing we have to add to all that. They have a number of navigational systems, but there's also geomagnetic fields of the Earth that are fairly reliable on cloudy days and that sort of thing. And they use that as well. We do know that they use that. And I'll explain that to you a little bit later. So they have a number of navigational systems, including the cytochrome system that is also found in humans and mice and other mammals and other animals, all the way down to actually to bacteria. And this is Danius aeripus, a larvae on Synancum levi. during the migration in April in Cafayate, Argentina. Now look at this, and then look at this larva here, and then look at this one here. This is Danius plexibus. This is one from Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a monarch. You can tell it's a monarch, right? But going back, you can see that it's missing the white bands, and that's all. It's all it seems to be actually missing. But this vine-like milkweed, it's not actually in the same genus as Asclepius, but it's a vine in Sinancum, has become an important pest apparently in southern Florida. This butterfly does not get up that far, and as far as I know, there's no wild releases of it. I truly believe that Aropus and Plexibus could probably be mated and produce viable offspring. So there's the Lanston star in Grand Rapids again. And here is a monarch that I found that emerged in Salta, the Beautiful in Argentina in April during their fall migration. And if you look at that, it's hard to tell apart from the one that we have here, Danaeus plexipus, but you can kind of tell it's got darker veins and a little bit more broad banding and that sort of thing. But other than that, when they fly, you can't distinguish them at all. Now, how do they migrate? Well, the wing formation during their gliding flight is an overlap. It's not like this wing is stretched out and this wing is back. These overlap so that the greatest strength is provided here for the gliding. This breaks up the wind pretty much. And this is the surface area that it uses. It's got to fly high in thermals. If it is actually going to glide, but it can save a lot of energy by doing so. It doesn't have to use up its fat supply so quickly. Now, this is very exciting. This is the spiral dance, I'll call it, that I think actually integrates all the information from skylight, from ultraviolet light, from plane polarized light, as well as geomagnetic cues. Watch this butterfly as it's released here. Here we go. I'll try to track it for you, but there it is. It's making circles up here, and it's powered flight. So it's flying hard, but then it reverses, just as you would use a digital phone to find out where, you know, north, south, east, west is. And it continues over here. It's hard to find, but continues around, makes another loop over here, just like that. And it continues. I almost lose it, but it makes a short loop right there and finally drifts over here. And believe it or not, after flying almost at cloud level, it drifts over and it drops right over the buildings of Grand Rapids. And it's right about here. And that, everyone, is basically southwest. So right there. Now you can release these over the lake. You can release these over a football field. Any area that has a large open space is suitable, but they always fly in these crazy circles. So they may do counterclockwise circles and clockwise circles. They may go back and forth on this thing. But if you have an intact butterfly with intact antenna and eyes that are not, you know, obscured or obliterated by anything, you will see this incredible dance that they do. And it's all powered flight. It's not gliding. So you can't consider that to be flying and finding for thermals because they don't. They continue to fly. But here's what happens if you blacken the antenna. Here you go. If you blacken the antenna, this butterfly doesn't seem to know what to do. You've knocked out the circadian clock that integrates all the material that goes to the central complex of the brain. And that one is flying pretty much due east. They lose their content. They lose all the information that they need to have to fly in the south-southwest area. And as I said, this is true for all monarchs. Even the ones in Argentina fly in the south-southwest direction. The ones in Argentina, of course, are kind of amazing because they're flying towards Tierra del Fuego, which is very, very cold in their migration, the total opposite of ours, but they all fly in the same migratory pathway, as well as the Western monarchs. Now, the Western monarchs fly in California and they meet the ocean. So rather than flying to just 12 spots in Mexico, they fly to over 100 spots along the coast. And I think that's just an example of an incomplete migration that was established several million years ago. And they just can't do it now, so nothing happens. They fly up along the coast and they now roost in eucalyptus trees, which are not related to the oil mill fir or anything else that they roost on in Mexico. Oops, sorry, did that one. And this is a very strange one, but this is Lake Michigan at sunset around, I think it was Saugatuck in August, but here's the sun reflecting. It's a mirror-like reflection on the water. Monarchs will still migrate at this time of night over the water. And so I'm going to show you what that looks like, just so you remember what summer used to be. So here's what happens when they fly out over the lake and they get stuck. Maybe a storm comes in. Of course, they're not aware about it because it's 80 to 120 miles across from the lake. Here's what happens. They will die on the beach or die in the water. They'll be blown up on the beach there with the waves. And we have another invasive beetle, the Asian lady beetles. They will feast on these monarchs. Here they are right here. It's kind of a sad ending. But these age very quickly. These butterflies, when they're on the water, of course, they look really, really old, and they may not be very old at all. This is a southwest orientation of caged monarchs. So you have to understand that before they can actually fly southwest, they have to learn the direction that they need to fly in. And when I've caged these butterflies in the fall, between August and even late October, they always line up or in this quadrant facing south-southwest. So I think what they do when they form these roosts here is they tend to occupy the area that they will be needing to fly in the next morning. Nobody's on the east side, nobody's on the north side, and very few on the southeast side. It's mostly here in the south-southwest quadrant. So I think that's important because I really think it's a learning curve for migratory monarchs. Now, some may say that monarchs are always migratory, that the ones that fly up here from Mexico are just doing a reverse trip, and in a way they really are. But they may have to be trained as well. Now, Beaver Island, which is where some of the study took place, this is a very weird thing. They have these really distant intergenerational matings of really old males and newly emerged females on Beaver Island. This is a newly emerged female right here, and this is a very old male. Sometimes it's reversed, but the wings are torn. I do not know how long these have been on Beaver Island. It could be the first generation that made it up there. It could actually be, under strange, weird years, the actual migrants from Mexico itself. So it's not that they know that they're flying to Beaver Island or to anywhere else up in northern Michigan. They simply know that you know, they're going in a genuine kind of northeasterly direction, and Beaver Island happens to be in the way of some of them. So the vagaries of the weather will determine actually where they went. This is Central Michigan University, and this is invasive star thistle area here, Centauri maculosa. And you can see it kind of dominates over here in the swales and some of the dunes. But this beach area here is like a desert in the summer. It gets very, very hot. Here it is right here. There's milkweeds down here, Syriaca. These are very, very well-blooming plants here. They will bloom from late July all the way through October. So it provides a very good nectarine resource for butterflies as they emerge either in the last generation or the second to last. So this area here produces a huge number of monarchs, millions and millions of monarchs. And in the fall, they line up on the beaches here. If it's a really good year, you'll see thousands of them just going back and forth, getting ready to migrate. They'll practice flying over the water, but they'll come back. Some will actually do that spiraling curve I showed you before, the flight before, and others will just fly straight at this point. They're not quite migratory. Here's a dune here, and you can see all the star thistle. Now, this has been taken over in the last few years. Most of the plants here are pretty well native plants. This is a bracken fern. Notice that the pinna are actually pointing up. It's so dry. And this is Artemisia. This is wormwood, I believe. So it's not a very diverse area here, but monarchs from 8:30 on to almost nighttime will be flying up and down these dune areas here. And they hit these star thistles rather than the goldenrod. The goldenrod isn't even blooming yet. So these guys are getting really fat on the sugars from these plants over here, and they're not even using goldenrods, which is what they used to use. So as you probably know, star thistle is invasive out west. It's a terrible weed. Costs the farmers hundreds of millions of dollars every year to eradicate or to control. But I think it's just uncontrollable. Now, when this was actually taken, we had a lot of monarchs that year, but the next year they pulled them. So they pulled all these star thistle, and I thought, these monarchs aren't going to have a chance. And indeed, the monarch population kind of crashed after they pulled these. So star thistle is invasive, and it's a very common plant. It takes over wherever it's found pretty much, but it's dependent on moisture. So in the soils here, where there's a lot of moisture, it'll do fine. These are all milkweeds. You can find larvae, eggs, mating monarchs here on the milkweeds all the way through the end of September into early October. And the last batch that removes itself from the island is usually about the end of October. They don't really have a deep frost there until about the same time that we do. Here is the star thistle itself. It's not a bad looking flower. They make the best honey out of star thistle. It's got a high price, so I don't think anybody who has bees and has honey operation there is going to get rid of this thing very soon. And it's very thick, you can see. It takes a lot to pull it out. And here's a monarch, kind of token up on a thistle right there. And here's more buds. These are dying fruits up here, but more blooms. So there's constantly blooms going on. This does not have the spiny type of star thistle structure that the newer invasive ones have. This is very soft, actually. It doesn't grab you. So this is a fresh monarch. This is probably the end of August, maybe early September. And then here, there are monarchs. You can't see them, but there's two monarchs if you look closely. And this is Asclepius Syriaca. They're laying eggs actually on the milkweed itself. And this is late in the summer, sometimes early fall. And these plants here stay green for the longest time. Now, in some areas where it's dry, like up here, they will die out. But this plant stays very green. So it's not this senescing of the food plant that's forced them to migrate. It's something totally different. Now, here's what you can do. If you want to prolong the day in Beaver Island, allow them to migrate even better, you can put your finger up here and hold up the sun and keep that sky open for them. And it's just a beautiful place to go. I hope that everyone got to hear that. I'm not sure that I'm on, but Landon, can you respond to that?
Yeah, we heard you, and that
okay.
Oh yes, I got that too. But yeah.
Okay, I do want to say a few more things if I could.
Oh yeah,
this
for
is
sure.
just
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just the background information is that, as you know, the Western monarch, which is exactly the same species as the Eastern monarch, is under dire threat of extirpation. I mean, it was down to like 10,000 butterflies just a year ago. It's rebounded a little bit, but I don't have much hope for it. So what I would propose is that because it's the same species as the one over here, genetically virtually identical to it, what I think happened, several million years ago after the Pleistocene glaciers, that when they retreated, the Western monarchs were really just a branch of the Eastern monarchs that went up towards California, Oregon, et cetera. And the other ones went on the other side of the Rocky Mountains up to the East Coast. But they do mix in Arizona. And the ones in Arizona around Phoenix have been tagged, and they will be found in Los Angeles overwintering. And they'll also go to Mexico. They've been tagged and they've been found in Mexico. So it looks like the bifurcation point for the Eastern monarch and the so-called Western monarch is right there in Arizona. You can understand why. It's a desert area, it's subtropical. And this is where the actual population split. But they use the same cues. They do exactly the same circular dance, and they fly exactly in the same direction. So as I said, they don't have a map. They just fly in that general south-southwest direction and hope for the best. I showed you the wings because you can see that they're big, broad wings, but those wings catch wind very quickly and it throws them off course. So they got to fly pretty high in prevailing winds and hopefully, get the best ride they possibly can. But that doesn't always happen. So they can be blown way off course. I do know the butterflies that live in Costa Rica will migrate up the mountains, and down again seasonally, just like ours do. And that's why I'm suggesting that the birthplace for all monarchs that we know, Cleophile, Aropus, and Plexippus, is actually found in the island of Hispaniola, where Dominican Republic and Haiti are today, across through Cuba at 19 degrees north parallel, and then all the way over to Mexico. In this case, it would be near Michoacan and other places like it. And remember, all those roosts are aggregated in one very, very small geographic area. And the fir trees that they have in Mexico are just species away from the ones we have up here at Beaver Island. So the white pine, we have Pinus strobus up here, they have Pinus pseudostrobus down there, and they have the oil mill fir. We have fir trees that are closely related to the ones down there. It's really kind of amazing. How do they get there with this migratory pathway I'm talking about? But also when they get there, how do they know where to go? They go there religiously to the same roost virtually every year. So religious that they set up shop there for tourists. So these are permanent long-term roosts, and obviously global warming may have an effect on that. It looks like it might have an effect on the Western group of monarchs of our Asclepius, or not our Danius, but it may be that all these things were united at one time around the island of Haiti. So if you go down to Haiti or Dominican Republic, you might be lucky enough to go up to the mountains there. And I forgot the name of the mountain. It's Pico something, Durante maybe. But that's where they roost for the wintertime, is up there. Instead of going latitude, they go up the mountains. And up the mountains, maybe 10,000, 11,000 feet, where it's nice and cool. The big mystery is that there are no known roosts down in Danius Arapis down in South America. They funnel down from the Pantanal, they funnel down from Bolivia, and then they follow the Cordillera, the Andes, all the way down. I was shocked. I asked a friend of mine when I was in the Pantanal years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. He said they have monarchs every year. And I said, you can't have monarchs every year, but the monarch that they have, Arapis, is virtually identical to ours. And I did not know that really at that. It must have been 10 years ago. But they fly down there and no one has found their overwintering roost. And they go down just like a pathway, just like they do in North America. So I think there's a lot of good study opportunity there for anybody who's interested in entomology, and especially migration. I think it's just a great opportunity, and it probably should be resolved before our lifetimes are over. And that's really all I have to say. Do you have any questions? Landon, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm just kind of waiting to see if any questions pop in.
Okay.
Yep. Any questions tonight? Scott, if you have questions there on that, and you guys are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Back when I was in college, I worked at Warren Dunes State Park summers, and we used to be there at like 6 in the morning, and we'd see monarchs come off the lake all tattered and worn. Were they traveling overnight or?
6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And what was the season? What month?
Would have been from the end of June to probably the end of August. I worked there.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this was the 70s, so I don't remember the exact detail.
Oh, okay. I understand. So if it was in June, our butterflies are still migrating through. Now, here's what happens. When they get to a big open space like Lake Michigan, they will follow the shoreline up. And frequently, if they're coming in over, what we would call Gary, Indiana, you will find them migrating across there. Now, Warren Dunes is very close to that. So that's what I would suspect is happening. And the same thing happens on Highway 2 in the UP. You will find tens of thousands of monarchs that have migrated. It seems like overnight, but it's not. But they end up on the shoreline there, and they're on the beach, taking up water, rehydrating. And nobody really knows where they come from, but they come across the lake, obviously. Probably not at night because their eyes aren't adapted for the night. But in August, the whole thing reverses. So we have seen monarchs in the islands of the Beaver Island chain actually migrate from one island to the other visually. We've seen them taking off. They'll do the spiral and they'll fly over there. So I don't know about yours. You'd have to give me an exact date. But if it's in June, they're coming north. If it's in August, even mid-August, they're going south. But it's a constant migration.
Any other questions? Yes.
Do I have to go up there?
If you say the question, oh, well, wait, we have a traveling mic.
It's a twofold question. Why is it we read about all the monarchs in Mexico, but I never see anything about the monarchs in Hispaniola? And the other question is, how do you blacken the antennas?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll do the antenna one first because it's easy. You use a very safe water-based paint so that if it rains, it'll wash it off. And what you do is you paint the distal third, you grab them by the wings, you take a fine camel hair brush and you just paint them real quick and let them air dry. I know it's kind of sinister, but you let them air dry, you put them in your cage and you acclimate them like you would a regular monarch that hasn't been painted. And of course, you release them where you do, and they just lose all their ability. Not only that, and this is kind of draconian, but if you cut off the distal end of their antenna, like the last third, they can't do anything. They just are totally lost. They will go in every which direction. They lose the ability to pick up the clues here and to set, not only that, but against the clock, you know, the sun clock that they have. And the second question, or the first question you asked was about Hispaniola. Nobody goes there. That's the problem. Everybody can go to Mexico and see all the roosts that they've set up by the Mexican government, but nobody goes to Hispaniola up in the mountains there. There's very tall mountains. I think it's the tallest in the West Indies over there, or is that the East Indies? I forgot which one. But anyway, I think they're the tallest mountains and they have snow in the winter. I know that because the doctor told me this, who lives there. But it's just a matter of exposure, just like everything else, right? So when you're looking at birds, I mean, what is it? The Kirkland's warbler that everyone gets excited about. But then there's dozens of species of warblers that nobody knows anything about. So we know all about our butterfly because of Chip Taylor at the University of Kansas. He started Monarch Watch years ago, and that's become a general population type of scientific endeavor. And so there's a lot of input there for our monarch. But like I said, nobody in South America knows where the South American monarch goes. And there's millions of them that come down the Andes every year. So that's what I said. There's a lot of PhDs available there, and somebody who can find a roost is probably going to be, pretty famous. So it would pay for the trip, right? Put a drone down there during the migratory season.
I'm reminded of the 100 years or so it took to find out where the Kirtland's warbler spent the winter.
Well, it wasn't that long ago. It was like 50, 60 years ago that they discovered where the monarch roost was. But, the Native Americans knew where it was. They had celebrations every year. We had to figure it out the hard way, right? The Canadians had to do it for us.
Any other questions? I think that's it, Matt.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I appreciate your time, and I'm glad that I could poison your minds again with my information.